For 6 days in the spring of 2021, the busiest shipping lane on the planet simply stopped. One container ship, the Ever Given, turned sideways in the Suez Canal, wedged bow to bank, and froze everything behind it. Nothing moved. Not the ship, not the 400 vessels stacking up at both ends, not the goods a huge slice of the world was waiting on. Here's the number that makes it land. That single stuck ship held up around $9 billion of trade every single day. Not because anything was broken, and not because of some far-off risk that might happen someday. One thing in the wrong place, stopping all the work behind it. That is a blocker. And clearing it fast, before the line behind it grows, is one of the most important things you will ever do as a project manager.
And that word, blocker, has a precise meaning on this exam that most working project managers blur. An impediment, or a blocker, is anything obstructing your team's progress right now. It is present tense. The work is stopped, or slowed, this minute because of it. A developer waiting on an access key they don't have. A crew that can't pour concrete because the permit hasn't cleared. A decision nobody upstream will make. The team is standing still and the clock is running. And PMI actually stacks 3 words together in the outline: impediments, obstacles, and blockers for the team. They are one family with a useful shade of difference. An impediment slows the work down. The team can still move, but everything drags. A blocker stops it cold. Nobody proceeds until it's gone. An obstacle is the hurdle in between. On the exam, you don't split hairs between them. They are all yours to clear, but that slows versus stops shade tells you how fast to move. A blocker is a fire. An impediment is a leak.
Wait, isn't that just a risk?
That is exactly the confusion the exam is testing, Kai, so let me draw the line hard. A risk is an uncertain future event. It might happen, it might not. You plan for it, and it lives in the risk register. An impediment is not a maybe. It is already here, in the room, stopping the work. And there is a third word that sits right next to it: an issue. An issue is a problem that has already occurred and now has to be managed. Risk is the forecast. Issue is the weather that actually arrived.
So picture the same fact 3 ways. The vendor might miss the delivery date. That's a risk. The vendor has missed the delivery date, and now you're managing the fallout. That's an issue. And your team can't start the next task until that delivery lands. That's the impediment sitting on top of the issue.
And PMI wrote the transition itself right into the exam outline. One of the enablers for this task is, in their exact words, recognize when a risk becomes an issue. That's the whole hinge. The moment your uncertain future event actually happens, it stops being a risk you're watching and becomes an issue you're managing. It moves out of the risk register and into the issue log, and your job changes from planning to acting. Miss that moment and you keep politely monitoring a fire.
So the register is the forecast. The log is today.
That's it exactly, and here's who this hits hardest. It's not the new project manager. It's the experienced one, because instinct is about to hand you the wrong move.
Think about how the servant leader model frames your job here. In PMI's world, you don't lead the team by standing over it and assigning work. You lead by serving it. You empower people, you coach, you facilitate, and above all, you go out in front of the team and clear the obstacles blocking their path so they can actually do the work. The Agile Daily Stand-Up is built around exactly this. Everyone says what's blocking them, and your job, the moment that meeting ends, is to go make those blockers disappear.
And notice what that is not. It's not sitting in a status meeting reading out that the team is blocked. Reporting a blocker isn't clearing a blocker.
Right, and this is where the first real skill lives, because before you can clear anything, you have to size it. PMI's very first enabler for this task is to evaluate the impact of impediments. Not every blocker is equal. One is holding up a single low-priority task that has plenty of slack. Another is sitting on the critical path, idling 6 people, and every day it stays there, the whole project slides a day. Same word, blocker. Wildly different cost. So you measure the damage before you decide how hard to fight.
And this whole area is worth real points now, because the domain it lives in just got much bigger. Business environment used to be 8% of the exam. On the 2026 version, it's 26%. More than a quarter of everything they test. and impediments is one of its tasks.
One genuinely useful thing before we go deeper. Over at certs.professorerica.com, there are free practice questions and free flashcards, no sign-up, and the business environment set is exactly the judgment-style question people fumble on exam day. Run through them right after this, while the risk versus issue line is fresh in your head.
So sit with this before we go on. A blocker is holding your team. Your gut says pick up the phone and escalate it straight to your boss. Is that the exam's answer? Hold that thought because it's about to trip a lot of experienced people. Let me pause for just a second because this genuinely helps. If you are getting value here, hit that like button, then subscribe and ring the bell. It costs you nothing, and it is the single biggest thing that keeps these videos coming. So let's pay that question off. And to keep us honest on the hard calls today, we've brought a guest to the desk. Professor Halloran, good to have you on.
Good to be here. Point me at any answer that sounds too clean and I'll lean on it.
So you've got a list of blockers on a real project, and they're never all the same size. PMI's second enabler is to prioritize and highlight impediments. Why rank them before you start swinging? Erica, take the first cut.
Because your attention is the scarcest thing on the project, and blockers don't wait in a polite line. You rank them the way you'd rank anything dangerous, by impact. An impact here has two dimensions. First, how much is stuck behind this blocker right now, the amount of work and value frozen while it sits. Second, how fast it spreads, whether the delay stays contained on one task with slack or ripples straight down the critical path and pushes the whole finish date. A blocker on the critical path with 6 people idle behind it beats a blocker on a task nobody's waiting on, even if the second one is louder. So here's the grid I actually run in my head, 2 axes. How big is the impact if this blocker sits, and how urgent is it? How fast is it spreading? High impact and high urgency, a critical path blocker bleeding the schedule, you drop everything and clear that now. High impact but low urgency, a big problem that hasn't started moving yet, you plan the intervention deliberately before it wakes up. Low impact but high urgency, something loud and fast but cheap, you delegate it or knock it out quickly so it stops making noise. And low impact, low urgency, you log it and let it wait. The mistake experienced people make is spending their best hours in the loud, low-impact corner because it is squeaking, while the quiet, high-impact blocker eats the project.
And that ranking is the difference between a manager who looks busy and one who's actually protecting the project. If you treat every blocker as equally urgent, you'll spend the same energy freeing a task with 2 weeks of slack as you do on the one bleeding the schedule dry. Sorting them is how you point your effort at what's actually costing you.
Let's make the impact real before I show you a number. Think back to that ship in the canal. Before I put it up, take a guess. The trade held up behind it each day, over or under $5 billion.
Under. 5 sounds high for one ship.
Nearly double it. About $9 billion a day frozen behind one blocker.
Okay, that changes how I triage.
And that's the point of impact. The size of what's stuck behind the blocker is the whole argument for how hard you fight it.
And once you've ranked them, PMI's exact word is highlight. You make the blockers visible. This is the opposite of the instinct to quietly absorb them and hope. On a board, the blocked item gets flagged, a red dot, a blocker tag, its own column, so anyone can see at a glance what's stuck and why. Visibility does 2 things. It stops a blocker from silently rotting in the corner, and it recruits help because a problem nobody can see is a problem nobody can solve. And the cultural half of highlighting matters as much as the board. You want a team that raises a blocker the hour it appears, not the day the deadline finally slips. That only happens if surfacing a blocker is treated as the system working, never as an admission of failure. The moment people learn that flagging a blocker gets them blamed, they stop flagging and the blockers go underground where they do the most damage. So you make it safe to say I am stuck, and you thank the person who said it first.
Take a composite example. A software team is blocked because a second department has to approve a security review before they can ship, and that approval just sits. On the board, it's one small red-flagged card. But behind that card is the entire release, weeks of finished work that can't go anywhere. The card is tiny, the impact is the whole project. That gap between how small a blocker looks and how much it's actually holding is exactly what evaluating impact is for.
So you just escalate that one instantly, right? Straight up the...
Careful, because that's the reflex the exam punishes hardest. Escalating every blocker the second it appears feels decisive, and it is usually wrong. Your first move is to act within your own authority. Can you get the two departments in a room yourself? You escalate only what genuinely sits above your authority, and when you do, you attach a recommended action, not just a complaint handed upward. A manager who escalates everything becomes the bottleneck, and trains everyone to stop bringing them problems.
So clear what's yours to clear. Escalate only what isn't. Say the trap version out loud so people catch it on the exam.
The trap answer is always the one that jumps straight to escalate to the sponsor or immediately raise it to management when the scenario clearly gives you the power to solve it yourself first. On this exam, escalation is a last resort, not a first move. If the question hands you a lever you could pull it before you pass the problem up. And watch how often the tempting distractor is the responsible sounding one. Log it and escalate when the scenario wanted you to act.
And none of this is my paraphrase. Look at the exam outline itself because the exact wording is the whole lesson.
Evaluate the impact of impediments. Prioritize and highlight impediments. Recognize when a risk becomes an issue. That is, size it, rank it, make it visible, and know the moment a maybe turns into a right now. Straight from the source, and notice PMI put reassess continually in there too because this is never a one-time sweep.
So carry two things off this desk. Rank blockers by impact because a critical path blocker and a high slack one are not the same emergency. And clear what's yours first. Now let's talk about how you actually clear one. So we can spot a blocker, size it, and rank it. Now the move the whole title is about. How do you actually clear the thing? PMI's third enabler is to determine and apply an intervention strategy to remove or minimize the impediment. Two verbs there worth catching. Determine, then apply. You pick the right move, and then you actually make it.
And determining the intervention starts with the root cause, not the symptom. A blocker is what you see. The intervention has to hit why it exists. If a team is blocked waiting on a decision, the intervention is getting the decider in a room, not sending another reminder email into the void. If they're blocked on a dependency from another group, the intervention is negotiating the handoff so it lands sooner. And an intervention comes in 4 shapes worth knowing by name. Remove it, actually eliminate the cause, the cleanest win. Minimize it, when you can't fully clear it, shrink the damage so it hurts less. Work around it, find a different path to the same outcome that doesn't touch the blocker at all. Or resequence, reorder the plan so the team does other valuable work now and comes back to the blocked task once it clears. You reach for remove first, but a blocker you can't remove today is never an excuse to stand still. You minimize, you work around, or you resequence, and the team keeps moving while you keep working the real fix.
And whatever you do, you write it down. This is where the issue log earns its place.
The issue log is a real project document, and PMI expects you to run one. It's a living list, 1 row per issue, and next to each one the things that make it actually get solved. A clear description, the impact. An owner, one named person accountable for driving it, not the whole team, which means no one. A priority. A target resolution date, and a status. When someone asks in a status meeting what's blocking us, the log is the answer, and every row has a name and a due date on it. A blocker with no owner and no date isn't being managed. It's just being watched.
Read me the actual fields. What's on a row?
Description, impact, owner, priority, target date, status. 6 fields. And the one people skip is the owner, because a shared problem is an orphan problem.
And here's the reflex to name, because there's a way PMI wants you to think the moment a blocker lands on you. On the exam, this is a step 7 move on the decision filter. You own it. You don't freeze and you don't dump. Freezing is doing nothing, letting the blocker sit and hoping it clears itself. Dumping is throwing it straight up to the sponsor the second it appears, so it stops being your problem. Owning it is the narrow path between those two. You act within your authority to clear what you can, right now, and you escalate only what you genuinely can't, with a recommendation attached.
And that's the neighbor step underneath it. Step 4. Lead as a servant. Removing the blocker in front of the team is the servant leader's actual job. Not delegating the pain back to them, not narrating it upward, but going and clearing the path. Those two steps together are the exam's whole model for this task. Own the blocker and serve the team by clearing it.
So on a real project, most of clearing a blocker is really just getting the right people to talk. I spend more time building keyboards than most people spend clearing blockers, and even I know the fix is usually a conversation, not a tool.
That's PMI's next enabler, almost word for word. Collaborate with relevant stakeholders on an approach to resolve the issues. You rarely clear a real blocker alone. The person who can actually free it is usually someone else, another team's lead, a vendor, a functional manager, the one person with the authority you don't have. Your skill is bringing the right people together on an approach fast and driving it to a resolution. And notice the word approach in PMI's phrasing. You don't just dump the problem on the stakeholder and wait. You bring a proposed way through and you build agreement on it. On a project where you have no authority over the people who can clear the blocker, and that is most projects, this is the entire game. You make the impact visible to the person who can act. You find the shared interest that makes them want to help, and the blocker gets cleared not because you ordered it, but because you made clearing it the obvious thing to do. Clearing a blocker is far more often an act of influence than an act of command.
Let me put a real number on why speed matters, because a blocker isn't free while it sits. Say one blocker idles a 6-person team for a week.
Run the cost. A week of 6 idle people is roughly $42,000 in labor doing nothing. The milestone that slips behind it, a launch or a billing date, call it $90,000 in delayed value. And restarting cold, the rework and the context switching to pick the stalled work back up, another $18,000. That one blocker, left to sit a single week, costs about $150,000. And here's the part that stings. Almost all of that was avoidable if someone had owned it on day 1.
So the cheapest day to clear it is the first day.
Always the first day. And the picture that captures why is one of the oldest jobs there is. When rivermen floated timber downstream and the logs snarled into a jam, somebody had to walk out onto that jam, find the one key log holding all the others and free it before the whole river backed up behind it. That's the intervention. You don't stand on the bank and report that the logs are stuck. You find the log that's holding the rest and you move it.
So the flow is clean. Find the root cause, pick the intervention, log it with an owner and a date, and pull in whoever can actually clear it. 4 moves, none of them wait and see.
And the reason none of it is wait and see brings us to the last move. Because a blocker you cleared on Monday can be back, or a new one can land, by Friday. So the final question is how you keep the path clear, over and over, all the way to the end. Let's go do that.
So we can spot a blocker, size it, and clear it. The last enabler is the one that keeps the whole thing honest. Reassess continually to make sure impediments, obstacles, and blockers for the team are being addressed. Halloran's back to help us drill it and lean on the edges.
Happy to. And this is the one people skip, because reassessing feels like admin right up until the day a blocker you thought you'd killed comes back to life.
The mechanism is simple and relentless. You work the issue log every status meeting. You walk each open row, you check whether the blocker you cleared last week actually stayed cleared, and you scan for the new ones that landed since. Because clearing a blocker isn't a one-time act, it's a standing loop. The unblocked project on Monday can be stalled again by Friday because a dependency slipped or a new decision got stuck. And the cadence tightens with the stakes. On a fast, agile team, the reassessment is the daily stand-up, every single day. On a slower, predictive project, it might be the weekly status review. When you're near a critical milestone, you check the highest impact blockers even more often than that. The rule underneath the cadence is constant, though. No blocker gets to sit unwatched, and every open row on the log has a name and a next action against it. Reassessing continually is how you catch a blocker coming back while it's still small.
And the cost of not reassessing has a face. Think about a project where a blocker lands and nobody drives it. In the late 1980s, a hotel went up in Pyongyang, a huge pyramid tower, and then in 1992 the money ran out and the work simply stopped. The blocker wasn't cleared, it was just accepted, and that building stood there unfinished, structurally topped out but frozen for about 16 years. A blocker nobody owns doesn't stay a small delay, it becomes the project that never ships.
16 years. That's a blocker that turned into a monument.
And it's not only far-off giants. Boston's Big Dig ran from a $2.8 billion estimate to nearly 15 billion years late, because obstacle after obstacle got worked around instead of driven to resolution. Impediments that aren't actively cleared don't disappear. They compound quietly until the number is enormous.
So here's the honest fork, and I want to push on it. If clearing blockers is this important, shouldn't the great project manager just remove every single impediment for the team so they never hit any friction at all? Halloran, make that case.
I'll push it hard. The best manager clears everything. The team should never touch a blocker, never wait on anything, never feel friction. You run interference on every last obstacle so they can just build.
That's not what the model says.
And you're right to stop me there, because that's the boundary. Clearing the genuine blockers, the ones that stop the work and sit above the team's reach, is exactly the servant leader's job. But a manager who swoops in to remove every micro-obstacle infantilizes a self-organizing team and makes it fragile, because the team never learns to clear its own path. The discipline is to clear what genuinely blocks and needs your authority, coach the team to clear the small ones themselves, and reassess continually so nothing important is quietly sitting. Remove the blockers, don't remove the team's agency.
So clear the real ones, coach the small ones, and never stop checking. Let's drill it exam style. First scenario. A risk you'd logged, a key vendor might slip, just came true. The vendor has officially missed the date and your team is now blocked. What's your best next action?
Recognize that the risk has become an issue, move it into the issue log with an owner and a target date, and act to remove or minimize the blocker now. That's a Step 7 answer. Own it. Watch the tempting distractors. Keep monitoring it in the risk register. It stopped being a risk the moment it happened. Or escalate it straight to the sponsor. Not yet, because your first move is to act within your own authority. You size it, log it, and drive the intervention before you ever push it upward.
Harder one. A blocker genuinely sits above your authority. 2 other departments have to agree and neither will move. You've tried everything you can do yourself. Now what?
Now you escalate, and this is the version of escalation the exam rewards. You've already acted within your authority, and it wasn't enough, so you raise it through the defined governance path, at the agreed threshold with a specific recommended action, not just a complaint. That's the difference between owning it and dumping it. Dumping is escalating on day 1 to make it someone else's problem. Owning it is escalating on day 3 after you've done everything in your power with a clear ask. Same action, completely different exam answer, decided by what you did first.
So both drills are really the same reflex. Own it first, escalate only what's left.
Professor Halloran, thank you. That pressure was exactly what this one needed. Leave us with the single line worth remembering.
My pleasure. Keep one idea and you'll never miss one of these. A blocker isn't a risk to watch or a problem to hand off. It's a path to clear. So you own it, you clear what you can, you escalate only what you can't, and you never let it sit.
And that settles it. Impediments live at Step 7, own it, don't freeze, don't dump, and you clear the path by serving the team at Step 4. Spot it, size it, clear it, and keep checking.
So Business Environment Task 4 is done. Next in this block is risk itself, managing it before it ever becomes one of these blockers. Don't sleep on this domain, it's more than a quarter of your exam now.
But hold today's 2 ideas first. A blocker is present tense. It stops the work now, and a risk that just happened is an issue you act on, not a forecast you watch. And you meet both by owning it. Clear what you can, escalate what you can't, and never let a blocker sit. Spot it, size it, clear it, prove it stayed clear.
If this finally made impediments click instead of feeling like a buzzword, subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making these. And the free practice questions and flashcards are waiting at certs.professorerica.com. The business environment set is exactly where the fresh, high-value points are hiding on the new exam. Before you close the tab, one honest question for you. On your last project, when a blocker hit, did you clear it yourself first, or did your instinct send it straight up the chain? Tell us in the comments. Own the path, clear what you can, and you'll pick the answer the exam is really testing for. We'll see you in the next one.